Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to be talking about tickets today. So many of you said you were interested in seeing how I make tickets, and there's really nothing special about how I do it, but I thought I'd take you through the process. Tickets are so much fun to use in our junk journals. They always sort of have that air of, something exciting you're going to get to do, someplace you're going to get to go. So I feel like there's sort of a visceral reaction that we have when we see a ticket. It's going to be a ticket to someplace interesting. There are digital kits you can get that have fun little tickets. I think I got these. I do very few digitals, but I purchased these from Tina at Shabby Dabby Doodah, and she has a nice set of tickets. Our old friend Tim Holtz, he always has almost everything we need, and you can I got this years ago that has a lot of, very authentic looking tickets in it, so those are fun to use, but it's also really fun and very easy to make your own. The easiest way to make a ticket, which I'm going to show you very quickly here, and then we're going to get to the little more involved way, is just to get a set of stamps. These are easily had on Amazon. I'm hoping I'm not giving too much glare here, but this is just a little set of silicone stamps, very inexpensive, where you can just stamp the image of a ticket, and that's what these these are here. You can put them on plain paper, you can put them on patterned paper, and we're going to very quickly look at how easy it is to do this, and they look great on pattern paper, I think, too. But here's one that I use a lot, and I just stamp it and then I cut it out. Cut that out. Let me try to get this somewhat straight. Look how easy that is. Just cut it out and you've got a nice little ticket that's just like this. So again, you hardly need instruction on how to do that, but let's look and see just how it looks in case you're interested in doing this, how it looks on something as simple as a book page. And then we're going to get to the more involved but really fun creative ways to do tickets. Here's another one on a book page. Now that one you lose a bit of the clarity of the text, so it's good to kind of experiment. But this could work tucked into something, and this one certainly could. It's very easy to see what that is. So just experiment a little bit to determine if it gives you the look you want. I probably wouldn't do this one, because the images are sort of fighting with each other, and but this one I think is really clear. So stamping, easy way to do tickets. Now, let me gather these up. Let's look at a way that we can make fun tickets like this. These I've completely made, and I did use a stamp set to get that word ticket on it, but if you'd like to go along for the ride on this, let's go through several steps that we get to, or that we go through before we get to this stage, because I think tickets are really fun to make. When I make them, and I tend to make them this size, this is an actual ticket that I kept from an event as a reference, and you can see it is 2 inches across and 1 inch down. Might be a little bit easier. That's the standard size of tickets if we're going to be somewhere and getting a drawing for a draw prize or a door prize or something like that. I like to take a piece of ugly scrapbook paper and do collaging on it. This is what's known as a masterboard. That's a larger piece of paper to use as a base. You can use a book page, you can use a piece of cardstock, you can use anything that's going to serve as a base, and just do a collage on top of it, and then cut it up into pieces. So this is in the process of becoming what we call a masterboard. If you're new to junk journaling, you may not be that familiar with that term, but it's super useful. I have this one almost completed. I didn't finish it because I wanted to show you how I like to finish this. You can see this polka dotty part here. This was the original. That's what this whole thing was on this side. I was very, very unlikely to be using that that polka dotted paper, and so I did not mind sacrificing it to make a masterboard. So I'm just going to finish doing my gluing. I have several masterboards that I just keep in reserve. I do them sometimes if I don't know what else to do. So I always have some sitting around. But this one I wanted to do special for this project, and I'll show you why. Typically, when I am collaging scrap paper into a larger piece of artwork, this margin here, this margin here, I would typically cut those out so that I would have just the text, and my visual experience would be a little more dense. But I like having, if I'm doing tickets, I know I'm going to be doing some additional stamping, some additional inking, some additional mixed media on top of this whole thing. So I kind of like having a little bit of blank area. These are some vintage documents. There's some blank things. I'm not going to be filling all of them up, but most of this is going to be filled up visually with some additional stamping and creative treatment. So let's finish this up and then we'll get to that part. That I shouldn't call it ugly because somebody went to a lot of work to design this, but that's just a pattern that isn't really my style. So I was happy to sacrifice this for this project. And it has a nice plain background. So when we cut this up to make our tickets, we'll be able to write a little something on the back of this. Is this gonna, yeah, that'll finish that up. Just using my glue stick to complete this masterboard. These can become almost anything. But I do like leaving that little bit of extra blank spot if I know I'm going to be using it for tickets rather than, the background of a tag or something like that. Oh, got a little bit of extra, little bit of space. We can't have that. A little piece of book page, and that'll cover up that little scrap. There we go. Now, when I make tickets, I really, really like to make them look like they have been around. I like, they've been in somebody's pocket. They've been, purchased. They've been jostling around with all kinds of other things. And I'm just going to trim up this back while I chat with you. And so I tend to use a fair amount of ink, of stamping, of distressing to get that look, particularly for these that are the realistic size. So let's just, with that in mind, let's just go ahead and make a mess of this. And that's what we're going to be doing. And then I'll let it dry. What did I do with my inks? I had them, oh, they're all right here. I chose a couple of distress, a small distress ink and a distress oxide. I use them interchangeably. And what I like to do here is to take an acrylic block. Oh, that one's kind of inky. Let me get a fresh sheet. I take an acrylic block and I just apply the ink right onto that acrylic block because it's easy to clean later. And then I spray it with a little bit of water. Oops. Well, there we go. And I'm just going to drip that liberally on here. It's going to give kind of a fallish look. What is this? This is Rusty Hinge. And I use the acrylic block just to kind of smush things down. And we're just bringing a little bit of color in into the process. And we won't get all over the whole thing because we're going to be adding some additional colors, but this is where everything looks really ugly. It certainly does, but we're going to be continuing to add things and add interest, add history, add intrigue. There's a little bit of that. Let's add a little bit of green using the same process. Oxide pads to me are a little bit juicier. There's just a different way that the chemical composition of this ink reacts with the water and reacts with our project, and reacts with the other inks. There we go. And I think after this, I'm going to stop with the ink. I'm going to let it dry, and we're going to come back and we're going to stamp. You can see this is very heavily inked over here. This is very lightly inked, or inked almost not at all in this area. And the nice thing is we're going to have some of each because we're going to be cutting this up into a big batch of tickets. I'll be back after this dries. Okay, let's continue with the mess making because this is now dry. I am going to add a few stamps on this, and I'm gonna use my brown. I'd kind of like to keep my stamping imagery kind of businessy, because I've been using some of these vintage business documents and everything, but truthfully, the pieces are going to be so small, it's not going to matter that there's a little bit of music in there. Don't know that this is going to show up all that well, but actually it might be okay. That's why I've left those margins there. And this will be just sort of a little bit of subtle background. I'll set that one aside. I did add a little bit of that kind of bluish green there. I felt like it needed that. That sort of lends itself to the fall theme. I've been purchasing when I've seen them, and they come up surprisingly frequently in your thrift store shopping, these old business stamps. I have obviously a lot of rubber stamps for crafting, but these are actual business stamps. So let me just kind of put a couple of these here because it's nice to have a touch of red. And put that in some of the blank areas. This is a self-inking one. I was surprised when I got it from this thrift store that it still seemed to be fairly juicy. Let's do maybe, no, I'm not going to do those numbers. I might do just a little more of the business stamping, although I don't really need a whole lot more text, but I think this is so funny. It's the Willard Shield Sanitary Service here in Portland, Oregon. Give that a couple of stamperoonies here. And let's do one more. I like to put things at an angle, because in the cutting that we're going to do with this, it's we're going to just catch little pieces of each one of these stamps. Oh, this doggone stamp pad. I think we're going to stop with the stamping for now, because we can always, I'm going to want to go in and add more stamping later when we have our stamps actually cut, I mean our tickets actually cut. So let's get to the next phase of production. Hold this stuff aside. I'm going to pull my cutter in here, and I'm going to be doing some scoring and some cutting. But from this master board, there's a little bit that I want to preserve. Most of our stamps are going to be those 1x2s. But I'm going to cut off a little bit because I have some I'd like to do just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to keep that same aspect ratio for them, and I'm going to make them 1.5 by 3. But the scoring is going to be different, and that's going to be clear. So I'm going to save this strip for the slightly larger tickets. All right, and this gets set aside. I don't usually have my big trimmer here at the cutting table, or here at the main craft table. All right, because I want these to be 2 inches, I'm going to go in and cut them in 1-inch slices, but I'm going to want to make a string of tickets. And so I'm going to want to score this masterboard at 2-inch intervals. I hope that makes sense. If you don't have, pull this down. If you don't have a scoreboard, don't worry about it. You can just fold. Just fold. That's fine. Just mark and fold. But I will tell you, having a scoreboard does make things easy. So a scoreboard, it's just this, plastic little surface with all these carefully engineered grooves at very precise intervals. And you just take a bone folder and run it along there. And it, for the most part, I can't keep it all in frame, but for the most part, even through these various layers here, that masterboard is going to be, the paper fibers are going to be compressed, and it's going to make it easier to fold. So we're going to hope that that works. I'm at 6. And 8. Those little grooves underneath, just kind of keep your bone folder in the groove. Here we go. So these are going to be the folds in between our little individual tickets. I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to bring our trimmer in again. So our grooves are going this way, but we're going to cut now what's going to become our strips of tickets. And I'm going to I'm going to want to cut 3 at 1-inch intervals. So just to keep the math straight, I'm going to cut off this extra 1/2 inch. And that can be something I'll use for something else. And now I'm just going to cut at 1-inch intervals. So our little score marks are going to be there, designating the folds between each individual ticket. see where this is going. I'm going to stop here because you don't need me to see me keep doing all the rest of these. So let's set this aside. Look at all of these individual tickets that we've got there. Now I'm going to fold them and hope that bone folder did its work. It's a little bit easier to see on the opposite side. Okay, it looks like I ended up with one that's just a little bit longer on this side, but there's a bunch of my 1-inch my 1-inch tickets here. Let's do another. Yeah, I definitely came out with something a little bit longer than I intended there, but that's all right. There we go. I'm going to set these aside because we don't need to have all of them. But here's where our distressing comes in. But firstly, I like to use a little, this is just a little punch. You could use just a little handheld punch too. But I like to notch in the corners of each individual ticket, just like, you know, the real life one does. Let me come in here, and I'm again going to go on the back side, so this is a little bit easier to see. And held punch does very well here too, but I use, as a visual indicator, I use those folds to cut little half circles there. Might be hard to see on camera, but I'm just coming through and punching half circles right on top of those folds. There we go. And I'm gonna, because I realized somehow this came out longer than 2 inches. I'm gonna mark that here, and there's the end of the road there. And so I'm just gonna kind of punch a quarter circle there. And at this end. Now let's do the same thing on the other side. Lots of steps with this. Frankly, I like doing these better than buying them, though. It just seems like you can come up with such interesting things. And again, out of nothing, all of these scraps that were on this masterboard, that wasn't anything I went out and bought. This was, you know, scraps from stuff I already had, books that were in my attic, old documents that my friend found and gave me. We go. Now, let's bring out the distress ink. I would obviously go through and do the same thing for each of these, but you can see just those little interesting pieces of that stamping and of that inking are showing up here. We're going to distress the edges, and then I'm going to come in and do a little more stamping. It's just so funny how, you know, you can have just a big, really kind of crazy looking, not especially attractive masterboard, and come up with these little cropped in, intriguing little bits of art that can be, you know, you see the shape and you know it's a ticket. And a ticket means, you know, you're going to get to do something. You've earned the right to go someplace. You've earned a chance to win a drawing. Okay, now we're almost done with this. And this is really the step you can go to immediately if you want. You can leave them like this. You can do a little more stamping. You can glue some words on here. I did find, and I always want to advocate that I don't want you to have to buy anything when you're doing junk journaling. But if you want, this is another very easily found stamp set that's on Amazon, and you just Google, ticket polymer stamps, and you will probably find this one. Lots and lots of people have this one. But I like this one because, again, very inexpensive, but it just has the word ticket in it. So I'm going to pull that out, and I'm also going to pull out one of these numbers, because a lot of tickets, if you're going to be in a drawing or something, they'll have some kind of number notation on the side. I've done plenty of tickets that don't have the word ticket in them. Cover this up. But let's go ahead and stamp these with the word ticket. We'll be very literal this time. You can stamp a heart in them. You will see that some will show up better than others. Maybe maybe I won't stamp ticket on every single one. Maybe we'll do some alternatives. Oh, that's not what I want to use. I like using Versamark. Where is my Versamark? Yeah, it doesn't seem to be here. I guess I'll use my StazOn. StazOn is a extremely permanent. Oh, not Versamark. VersaFine, and it's right over here. Fine then, fine. All right. I'm just gonna get this ticket stamped here. But I like using, the StazOn would have given me a very similar effect, but I like using the Versamark. It's a pigment ink. It's really good for a good, strong image. And actually, it's probably strong enough that it'll show up nicely here, too. There we go. There's these tickets. Should we put just a few little numbers on them? Let's do that. Of course, in this case, it's going to be the same number over and over. But let's do a few, and then maybe we can do a few with our library stamp. That's going to add an air of authenticity to it, isn't it? Now, if you were doing a drawing for this one and you called out and the winning ticket is 64247, you would have 17 people going, yay, that's me. There we go. And I think I'm going to use one of my other library stamps that has a whole bunch of random numbers on it. There's no significance to these numbers that I have here. It's not like on Lost, when there were those numbers on the hatch, or those lottery numbers that poor Hurley went nuts on. Remember the show Lost? Dan and I just rewatched that not long ago. It was a good rewatch. Some characters I didn't like nearly as well the second time. There was a character named Sawyer who I remember feeling very swoony about when I first watched it, when it first came out, and his character did not age well, I didn't think, particularly in the early years. He was handsome and flirty when we first watched it 20 years ago, and in recent years he just looks creepy. But anyway, enough about that. There are our tickets. Aren't those fun? Oh, I really, really like those. What I would like to do before I let you go is to use this slightly longer strip, and we'll just see how this looks when it's a little bit larger. The aspect ratio is the same, so I think it'll probably look okay. Oh, I love how these turned out. I think they look interesting. They look like they've been around the block. They have some sort of a history to them. Okay, so these are 1.5 inches across. So to keep that aspect ratio the same, I'm going to score them at 3 inches. I know the reason that these were too long, you know, that strip was too long, it's because this was 12-inch scrapbook paper, but there was a 1/2 inch wide branding strip at the end that I didn't account for. All right, let's use our same process for getting that little indentation at the fold. And because this was the edge of my masterboard, I think I didn't do a whole lot of inking. My inking, my embellishments were took a lighter hand on this edge of the masterboard than they did in the middle. So I might be able to do a little more stamping to fill that in. Or maybe we'll just like the lighter look. Okay, let's distress and we'll see what we need. Distressing just gives you so much more of a sense of what the shape is, where the lines are defined between these elements. And you know, how can you use them in a journal? You know, there's room to, you could just put them all down in a row, or maybe put them on a little bit of a heavier substrate and make a wonderful little belly band. You can cut them apart and put them in little pockets, and just room for a tiny little bit. Here, I'm pointing at things that are off camera. You have room for just a tiny little bit, you know, like, you know, today my new baby nephew was born, can't wait to meet him, or something like that. You know, just a tiny little thing that's something special about your day. Maybe it's a lyric, you know, a little bit of a song lyric. You don't even have to have, you know, tell the reason why. Sorry, I had those off camera earlier. I'll put them down here. But they're super useful in a journal. And you know, that shape, it's like so many different things. There's so many shapes that just make us associate with certain memories, with certain feelings. Don't know that I love these all that much, but maybe if there was a little additional stamping here, I would do so. What else do we have here? I have this one, but I've got that here. Maybe I'll pull out my certified mail stamp and just kind of haphazardly put that here. That gives a little extra zip there, doesn't it? That adds to it a little bit. I have the word ticket on the other ones, but maybe in this one, maybe I'll do admit one. It's kind of small, so it might look a little funny here, but we'll see. It might look a little out of proportion because it is small. Maybe I won't bother with the classic ticketry there. Maybe I will choose some other form of embellishment. What do I have here? I'm just going to grab whatever I've got over here. Well, I say I'm grabbing whatever I've got, and then I'm shuffling through a whole bunch of things. Here's something floral. Should we try something floral just for some contrast? Let's go with the brown again. I don't know that I'm going to love this, but you know, I like experimenting with you here on the channel, because I think that, you know, we all do experimenting at home and we all learn. Even when things don't look so great, we all learn from them. I kind of like that floral. Let's do the floral on 2 of them, and then I'll grab something else here. A little bit of grass. And then I'm going to come back in with that number. Oh, I swear this thing is going to be the death of me. Or at least the death of my sanity. There we go. Yeah, let's go back to this number stamp. And maybe I will stamp this in the dark green. How about that? Kind of like having some numbers on one end here. Yeah, don't know that I love these. I like the smaller ones better, but there could be some situations where I wanted these larger ones. And you know, maybe my mistake with these is that I'm using the same process for the larger ones as I used for the realistic size ones. Maybe my approach should have been to do like a little bit of collaging or something on that. I will try that another day, because that could be, you know, that could be something that could be really cute if there was a little bit of collage on it, something that added a little more visual depth rather than just the flat stamping. So I think I'm going to hold on to these. You know, you may see these come back with a little more collaging on top of them. You know, that's the thing about paper crafts. When you make something that just doesn't look that great, you can just paste stuff on top of it. I think that's what I'm going to do with these. That's going to be another day. But for now, here are these tickets. And I hope you see how easy and how fun it was to do these. I think it works out great if you do happen to have, you know, some of these stamps, but you could just write something on them. You could put, you know, put a little sticker or something on them. They don't have to have anything fancy in their construction, and you don't really need any fancy tools. I know I used a lot of my tools here today, but these are all things that you could do just folding, just, you know, just cutting with scissors. So I hope that answers your question about how I make tickets. And I think I'm just going to sit here at my desk and finish these, and we'll see how they all turn out. Okay, here's what I ended up with. I left my fingers nice and inky, so you can see if you do this, prepare to get inky. But I just used my my various stamps and did different versions. I can see these as belly bands. I can see these as trims on the top of a pocket, the side of a page. I can see them cut apart and inserted into a tiny little pocket. I'm just going to set these away, and I'm going to be using them. I wanted you to see the larger sized ones that were certainly not my favorite. I'm enjoying them now because I want to make sure you can see these. I did do a little bit of collaging on top of them, and I think they look a lot better. It seems to me if they're not the traditional ticket size, you do something a little untraditional with them, and that's a little unexpected artwork. So anyway, that's our ticket adventure for today. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.